and a very happy good evening to you, my friends. I'm Dr. Randy Fink, and it is that time again. It's 5 o'clock on the Gulf Coast, which means 6 o'clock in the East, 4 o'clock in the mountains, and 3 on the West. And it's time for Fertility with Fink and Friends. I am Fink. You are friends, and it's great to see everybody here this evening. We do this every Tuesday night. I am live from Pensacola, Florida, where I am a fertility gynecologist here at New Life Fertility, with offices in Pensacola and Mobile and Alabama and Panama City. I also work with the fine folks at the Missouri Center for Reproductive Medicine in St. Louis, Chesterfield to be precise, and in Tulsa as well. Every Tuesday night, we get together and talk about all these things that are important to us. That's things about having a family, things about making a family, about getting pregnant, being pregnant, all these things about women's health that mean so much to us. And it is great to see all my friends. I've got some different feeds here. If you're watching from this camera, this is my Instagram, which is Randy Fink MD. I've got New Life Fertility's Instagram, which is right here, and that is New Life Fertility. We've got Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube right here in the middle between New Life Fertility and MCRM. And also, we are proud members of the First Fertility Network, and that is who sponsors us here this evening. Hello to my friend Rosa. Thank you for always being the first one here. My dearest Rubeline is here as well this evening. If you are still on, a special hello to you, Ruby. Carly Steinkraus is here. Hey, Carly, nice to see you there. Tiffany, how are you? We've got, looks like D. Meyer over here. We've got Sheila. We've got Anwar, looks like Anwar Hamad. D says hello. And all the folks who have joined here, I've got a few on the Facebook side, but I can't, it doesn't tell me who you are. So feel free to reach out and say hello. We're here to answer all your questions tonight, talk about all those things that are important. So please throw them my way, and I am happy to make it our most important topic of conversation. First day of summer, right? Well, actually, technically not, but here on the Gulf Coast, it has felt like the first day of summer. It got really, really hot and humid yesterday. And so we're definitely enjoying, I think we may have one more or two more cool days, but after that, that's probably the last we're going to see of it here, at least until fall. Hey, Aaron, thank you for being here from Dallas tonight. Hopefully you're doing some good shopping and going to bring us back all kinds of wonderful gifts here when you come, because gifts really are what are most important, right? They say it's not about what you receive, it's about what you give. So I want you to remember that it's about what you give. Very important lesson there, right? Marlena, how are you? Let's see. Carly says, and a special hi to, we've got Katie from New Mexico. We've got Jen Hardwick over here on the Facebook side. Thank you for being here this evening. But it sounds like Carly needs some support tonight, because Carly says, sorry to bring this darkness with me, but I am broken and at a loss for what the heck is happening. She just had a second miscarriage confirmed yesterday. She had made it to 9 weeks and 6 days, and now she is at a loss for what to do next. Testing and where to go and how to stay pregnant. Well, gosh, Carly, that I have to tell you is a very difficult thing to deal with. And first of all, I'm so sorry that you are dealing with this tonight. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this really at any time. This is kind of one of the hardest things that we have to deal with, and that is when the pregnancy doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And Carly, you're telling us that these were both euploid embryos, which means they were tested, they were chromosomally normal. You had two miscarriages with chromosomally normal embryos that aren't sticking. So the worst part, Carly, I think about all this, and and let's definitely talk here about where I think you go next, and what needs to be tested, what needs to be looked at. The most important thing is to realize that what you've been through is really very much indeed a trauma. This is something that is kind of one of the cruelest twists of fate I think we can have. And that's when you go through fertility treatment, and making the choice just to have to go through fertility treatment is something that, is incredibly difficult. It's not easy to get there, but you've gotten there. And then you do the treatment, you get the eggs, you make the embryos, and then you test those embryos, and you find out these embryos are chromosomally normal. You've been through so many hoops to have to jump through to get to that point. And then you do the embryo transfer, and then you find out that you have a positive pregnancy test, only to learn a few weeks later that that pregnancy stops growing. There's nothing good to say here. What you're experiencing is very truly a loss, and I certainly understand why you do feel broken here, having had to go through all that. We're all with you here, my friend. Our thoughts are with you. Our love and our care is with you. But let's talk about now what you might do to see sort of what's going on here. First of all, I am sure that your docs are going to want to do a workup. What does that workup look like? Well, the first thing I want to know is inside the uterine cavity normal? So most pregnancy losses we know are considered to be more likely chromosomal problems. You have tested euploid embryos, so we know that those are said to be chromosomally normal. And I'm getting a lot of comments here, Carly, and I don't know if you can see them all, but Jen is sending thoughts and prayers, and as are so many other people. So I think it's really important for you to know that you are not alone here tonight. Okay. These are tested embryos, so we believe that the chromosomes are normal. Now, when one of those doesn't work, potentially two, is it possible that there was some chromosomal thing? It could be. We say that the chromosomes are normal. That doesn't tell you anything about the millions of different little chemical reactions that are taking place in an embryo at any given moment. And when one of those little chemical reactions goes wrong, that may stop the embryo from growing. Still, if these are happening at around 10 weeks, those kinds of things typically happen a little bit earlier. There is a workup that I would want to do. And as I started to say, first, I'd want to know that the inside of the uterine cavity is normal, that there's not scar tissue, that there's not polyps, that there's not bands of muscle, balls of muscle, fibroids, anything on the inside that may be contributing, a septum that may be contributing to ineffectual blood flow to that uterine lining, or a problem in the place that the pregnancy is implanting. My suspicion is that by this time you have had your cavity evaluated, and you probably know that it's normal. But there are some situations in some places where that slips by without being looked at. So I think that's important. There's some blood tests that I would want to do that are also very important. I would want to actually test chromosomes in both you and the male partner. Now you would say, but chromosomes, why is that necessarily even a thing? Because these are euploid embryos, right? These are tested embryos. We know that they're chromosomally normal. Well, there can be a problem that we have in our genetics, mom and dad genetics, that is something that's called a translocation. And a translocation is where a piece of one chromosome literally transposes with a different place on a piece of another chromosome. And this translocation may do absolutely nothing in you and me. But when that translocation is brought down through generations, it can magnify and create a problem that can be incompatible with life in the offspring. So I would want to know your karyotype, and that's just done through a blood test where you and the male partner have a blood test and it says 46XX and 46XY. Otherwise, it may show a translocation, and a translocation is something that you can test for in an embryo, but it's not tested for in standard PGT-A. So you had tested euploid embryos. This is actually something that's called a structural rearrangement. It's tested for in PGT-SR. And they have to know what they're looking for in order to select the embryos that don't have it. So a karyotype is a very important thing. There are some blood tests that we do to look to make sure that your body is not creating a situation where you are forming little blood clots in the small blood vessels that supply your placenta. There is a standard panel that comes from the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. It looks for something called a lupus anticoagulant. It looks for something that's called an anticardiolipin antibody. It looks for something that is called a beta-2 anti-beta-2 microglobulin antibody. These are things that are a standard kind of blood test to do. I do think it's definitely worth doing that. Lastly, there's some consideration to say that could endometriosis be involved here? There can be a test, a non-invasive test that we can do to see if endometriosis is affecting the way you metabolize your progesterone in the uterine lining. That test is called Receptiva. All these things are things that I would want to talk to you about, Carly. This is it's a terrible situation to be in. We are all here with you, but I want you to know that there is a very specific list of things. There are a specific list of stones, we might say, that we will look under to try to find reasons why this keeps happening and things that we can do to prevent it. There are also some other autoimmune things that we'll look at. So it's not that you are lost out there all on your own. There are some specific things to seek here as we're looking for answers. Meanwhile, Carly, all of our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family tonight as you go through this really, truly devastating loss. I sure am sorry. If you are just joining, my name is Dr. Randy Fink, and I am a fertility gynecologist, and we're here to talk about all the things that are important to you in getting pregnant and staying pregnant, and in raising, and in not so much raising our families, but in having our families, and in women's health. That's what I do, and I am here to share that with you. So throw your questions right in. Dee says, does New Life Fertility have other places to do workups and testing if you live more than 4 hours away? How does that work? So basically what we do is that, we have a consultation. We do that through, a virtual consult. It's a telemedicine visit. We can order everything that we need to order blood test wise. We can do everything we need to do remotely if need be. And then we kind of get back together and kind of go over those results line by line in order to figure out what do we need to do to help you get sperm together with egg, because that's the ultimate equation. Even if you're doing a treatment with us, there is the potential for outside monitoring. So we have folks who come from all over the country who will do their monitoring at home, wherever they may be, and just come here for the treatment itself, maybe for the IVF or for the embryo transfer. It's a wonderful place to come, by the way, to get pregnant. The beach is wonderful this time of year. I'm not sure where you're from, Dee, but yeah, we have folks that come from all over the place in order to seek the care here. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward and easy thing to do. Hi to Sarah, and by the way, Carly, Dee sends many hugs to you and your family tonight. Let's see here. Indepino Journey, howdy. Marlena likes my glasses. I appreciate that. And okay, Aaron said I was yawning and missed that last that. Okay, that's just not funny. That's not funny. She's making fun of me because I yawn a lot. All right, I yawn a lot because I practice obstetrics for a long time, which means that I probably have a 30-year sleep deficit, and so I'm entitled to yawn if I want to. It doesn't mean I'm bored. It just means that, of course, now I'm probably going to end up having to yawn because I'm talking about it. And that is your fault, Aaron. That is entirely your fault. Let's see. Independent Journey says, how much estrogen does a 23 millimeter follicle make? Can it be more than 300? So I would say a 23 millimeter follicle is definitely a mature follicle. And so a mature follicle we typically think of as being 150 to 250 is kind of the number that I expect to see of estradiol in your blood. So one single mature follicle, 150 to 250 most of the time. It can be more than that, but also, all your other, what we call the antral follicles, which are the other little small ones in the ovary, they're still producing estrogen as well. Can it be more than 300? Yes, it certainly can. Sometimes, honestly, I might check somebody's estrogen level and it looks like they have one follicle growing and that estradiol level is 6 or 7 or 800. And it's like, gosh, how did it get so high from that one follicle? Sometimes it just does that. That estrogen comes from some cells that are called the granulosa cells. And the granulosa cells are the little cells that surround your egg. They're the same cells that make your AMH hormone, the anti-Mullerian hormone. Sometimes the estrogen is just high like that. And Aaron, doggone it, I wouldn't have yawned, Aaron, if you hadn't made me. If you hadn't started talking about it, you had to go and blow the whole thing there. Yeah, thanks a lot. Rosa asks, how long after weaning can I start suppressing with Orilissa after transfer? Do I need to wait for a period to come back if I want to transfer as a modified natural? Well, you can start doing your suppression really at any point that you're done with your breastfeeding. But yes, you are absolutely right that if you are looking to ultimately do a modified natural, it gets a lot harder to do when you've been on suppression, because with suppression, you're turning off the pituitary function, how the pituitary gland, how the brain is talking to the ovaries. And so when you turn that off, it sometimes takes a little bit of extra time for your ovaries to wake up and be able to respond. And so given that, I often think that doing a programmed cycle or medicated cycle may be, it's often a little easier after doing hormonal suppression for endometriosis, Rosa. I'm not sure that there's a hard and fast rule, but yeah, it would be nice to be able to see that, yeah, you did have a period on your own. So we can say, okay, well, the whole thing restored itself and now we're going to suppress it. Because then at least we know that, periods kind of came back after you were done with breastfeeding. So there's no hard and fast rule about that. There's nothing that is specific. It kind of just depends on a conversation that you might have with your doctor. I think in that scenario, yeah, it's not a bad idea to get that first period just so that we know. Oh my heavens! Now I can't stop yawning only because we talked about it. Oh gosh, I'm embarrassed. So hopefully, Rosa, that makes some sense there. Hi, Lisette. Eileen Bailey. Oh my goodness, it's so nice to see you, Eileen. And I go way back with a lot of mountains to climb, and Eileen is one of the finest, is one member of one of the finest couples that I know. Really, truly wonderful people who are finally given a gift from heaven, and that is a little baby. And I'm so happy for you guys, Eileen. Think about you all the time, and it's great to see you here. Hi, Midgie. Okay, so Carly goes back there and says the endometriosis was tested for, and you suppressed for 2 months. Usually, I would think if endometriosis was going to be involved with that kind of recurrent pregnancy loss situation, it would be much earlier. It might be like recurrent biochemical pregnancies and that sort of thing. But close to 10 weeks, I start thinking of other mechanisms. But really, just tough. A tough thing to go through there for sure. Hi, Travis and Pam. Sharmilla is here tonight. Boy, we have a whole reunion, don't we? Winnick, good evening to you. Thanks for being here. Jen asks, I have an upcoming telehealth visit for the first time appointment. I'm nervous. What does that first time appointment entail? Well, it's just a conversation, nothing to be nervous about. It's generally a pretty low stress kind of thing. We always want to get some history. We want to learn about you, kind of hear about your journey, what you've been through, and what got you to where you are today. We'll have some specific questions about different things that may reflect some hormonal stuff and some physical things that we'll ask you about. And then we'll talk about what the basic testing is that we want to do for you. The basic testing that tells us a little bit about your hormones, tells us a little bit about your body, about your uterus and your ovaries and your fallopian tubes. And that's really kind of what it is. Usually once we have that information, we get back together and we kind of go through it line by line and figure out what we do in order to get you pregnant. What do we learn from you? Semen analysis is always going to be one of those things as well. And so it's something that both members of the couple will participate in. But no need to be nervous. It is really just a friendly chat, kind of about where you've been, where you're hoping to get. We'll also probably talk a little bit about what some of those treatment options look like as we get closer to that point. So looking forward to meeting you and your husband, Jen. D says, are there any age limits per all your locations that you visit? CNY claims they don't. I'm trying to find a location that would be willing to work with me and not discredit me due to age. Well, so there's no specific age cutoff, but we want to be very realistic about what an actual age means, because as we mature, it becomes harder for us to have a baby for a couple of reasons. One is because certainly, we start to lose eggs. So women are born with all the eggs that you will ever have. So on day one of life, that's the highest number you're going to have as long as you're breathing. The number just kind of goes down from there. And additionally, the DNA in some of those eggs starts to become less stable. So we know it does get harder for us to get pregnant. So it's not specifically an age limit, but, we want to be realistic, Dee. And I will say that there are some practices that will say, sure, bring it on. As long as you pay, you can do whatever you want. And in my mind, I want to be very ethical and very upfront and honest about what our chances are, depending on what your age is and on what we're dealing with. Now, that said, not sure what you're thinking about doing there, Dee, but ovaries do age at a different rate than the uterus does. So there are some folks who are overtly menopausal, which means that there are literally no more eggs in the ovaries. So getting pregnant with your own eggs is not something that physically is possible. In that scenario, you can get a donor egg, fertilize with a partner's sperm, create an embryo. Your uterus doesn't know anything about the ovaries for the most part. The uterus, nobody told the uterus. So, you could be 55 and menopausal. The average age for menopause in the United States is about 51.4. You could be menopausal, but your ovaries, or rather your uterus, thinks that you're 25, 28, 30 years old. So the uterus can still work to carry a baby. There are some practical concerns with that. So these are definitely things that we want to talk about. But as far as age restriction, I would not tell you that there's specifically a restriction we just want to be honest, just want to be upfront with knowing what you're looking at. And that's something we're happy to talk with you about. Hi, Pooey in St. Louis. Nice to see you here this evening. And gosh, I was so I've got we're doing retrievals here in Pensacola this week, and actually MCRM has retrievals coming up this weekend as well. I was going to be there this weekend, but I am not at this point. I will be there in July, and I can't wait to go to your restaurant, Pooey. Thank you for showing up here tonight, and I'm going to bring you some ponzu sauce. How about that? Zinni in Miami, good evening to you, our favorite payroll person for the city of Doral. It is great to see you here tonight. Hopefully you did not have too many headaches at work. I don't know if this is payroll week or not, but the work you do is definitely appreciated. In fact, you know what? Hats off to all those payroll people who have to sit there and process all our stuff so that we can get paid in order to be able to live our lives. Yep, hats off, Zinni. And I'm not even wearing a hat, but if I were, I would take it off to you, my friend. Let's see. Daisy is here from Miami as well. Gosh, we've got all kinds of nice folks stepping up here. This is a question that I got by email. Pardon me. And the question was, and this is something we've actually addressed before, and that was, my husband does not want to participate by doing a semen analysis. Will you still see me? And the answer is yes, we will see you, but we treat you as a couple. So in the absence of knowing what the sperm situation is, we really can't intelligently offer you a treatment. Now, that said, there is, in general, obstetrics and gynecology, we might say, well, we could try some ovulation induction for a few months without seeing a semen analysis and knowing where we are, because, if you're young enough, then that's not something that's going to harm you. It's probably not going to take up too much time. In a specialist practice, probably we wouldn't go there. We would say, sure, we can look at your numbers, but we can't really know what the true situation is, or really offer a treatment option unless we can see sperm. Commonly, something I'll hear is, yeah, but my husband, but he already has a child. He has an 8-year-old. I'm like, well, okay, great. From a previous relationship, I presume, okay, you've got an 8-year-old. Lots of things can happen to sperm over the course of 8 years. And so updated semen analysis is usually something we like to see every year. A very special shout out to nurse practitioner Angela Fox, who has just joined from Minnesota. Minnesota, yes. I always want to say Milwaukee, but Minnesota. And I was privileged enough to help that wonderful family there be involved in some treatment a while ago, and they came to my town here, Pensacola. They were in Pensacola because, again, the beach is so nice, and I got to meet that beautiful baby, and I got to see a beautiful couple again that I hadn't seen for a few years, and it was really such a wonderful treat. So thank you, Angela. Thank you for being who you are and doing what you do, taking care of people's hearts up there in America's heartland, America's cold heartland. People ask me, you may know that I moved here to Pensacola from Colorado. Yeah, it's definitely a difference, but it's nice to be back on the water, having spent 20 plus years in South Florida and Miami and the Keys. It is really great to be back by the water. I do miss the mountains. I miss the fact that Colorado is very, very dry. The air is very dry. Humidity is not so much a thing. And dryness here is not so much a thing. Humidity is kind of more just really the way of life, you know. Hey, it's half past the hour, which means it's time for something very important that we do here, and that is the 5:30 Fuzzies with Fink. And if I could ring a bell, it would go ding, but then I feel like I'm like on a morning radio show or something if I add sound effects. The 5:30 Fuzzies with Fink is the time that we all can get together and take a moment to think about all those people this evening who are hurting, all those people who are in need, all those people who have struck out on this journey, who have faced the obstacles, who have tried to climb the mountains and are just dealing with hard times. And that can be something in the fertility arena, like we talked about a little earlier with our friend Carly. That could be things related to work, things related to family, relationships, whatever these curveballs that life throws us, they can be very difficult to handle and can make us feel very dark and very much alone, feeling like we're the only ones out there who are suffering. And I'm here to tell you that this is a wonderful and very loving group of people. I think there is not and most of the folks, I can generalize that, who watch this podcast are people who would give you the shirt off their back if they knew that you were in need. Because I think all of us have been there ourselves. We all know what that's like. This is the time that we stand together as one community and send out all the positive vibes to everyone out there who needs to feel like they're not alone tonight. So to you, Carly, to all of our friends who haven't spoken up but who are hurting here, please know that you're not alone. That, as I often say, every step forward with hope, because tomorrow is a new day and it's full of all new adventures. There is hope for tomorrow. It's going to be a brighter day. And my friends, let's break the internet with kindness right now by sending out all those positive vibes to everybody tonight who would just like to feel a hand on their shoulder, an arm around their back, to know that they are not in this by themselves. That's what we do. That is the 5:30 Fuzzies with Fink. Please ask your friends to join next time, even if it's only for 2 or 3 minutes at the bottom of the hour. But we're going to be here for another till top of the hour, where we can talk about all those things that are important to you. And if you've just joined, we've got Randy Fink MD right here. That's my Instagram. We've got New Life Fertility Instagram here. We've got Facebook's from First Fertility and MCRM and New Life. We've got LinkedIn. We've got YouTube. All different ways to join us. Please throw your questions up here, because that's what we're here to do. My name is Randy Fink. I am Fink. You are friends. This is Fertility with Fink and Friends, where we talk about all that business and more. Okay, so let's see who we got. Angela Sack. Hey, Angela, good to see you this evening. Bailey Kronk, how are you, my friend? Been thinking about you here lately as well. Heavenly Joy, howdy. And Marlena asks, if you are suppressing on Orilissa, should you ovulate through it and get a period? Most people who are on Orilissa will not ovulate. It really suppresses ovulation. What it's doing is selectively turning down your estrogen, which feeds back into your pituitary gland and tells the pituitary to stop doing its thing. When the pituitary shuts down, the ovary shuts down, and then you don't make any more estrogen. So that's kind of the way that works. So in general, no, you don't ovulate through it. Most people would not, but some people will bleed through it. So if you start Orilissa when you are on your period, then you will probably not have irregular bleeding. If you start at mid-cycle or sometime when you're not on your period, you probably will have some irregular bleeding. And that's just kind of the way that I counsel people, because that's sort of to be expected with that. But ovulation, no, not so much. Sheila says, believe, hope, and love. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's see. D asks, can anyone request just you for one's journey? If I prefer to work with just you, is that something that can happen? So in my practice, I am at least in New Life Fertility here. I am the only doctor, so I am the doctor that you would be dealing with here. But we do have a wonderful staff of other providers, or rather of some nurse practitioners and our nurses, our coordinators. These are people who you may have more day-to-day contact with, but when it comes to making decisions about your cycle, all those questions end up coming past me. So it's a one doctor operation in that regard. And I feel like that is a great thing. I come from an environment where we had lots and lots and lots of providers. And with lots of providers, you can have lots of different opinions, but which is not a bad thing, but it also means that you may never speak to the same person twice. So I really like it that we can offer that more boutique kind of relationship, as we're going through the journey together. Hey, Noodles for Life, and hi, Reagan. Good to see you here this evening. I've got Haley 26 here as well. Heavenly Joy says, what are the supplements and vitamins to use in preparation for an embryo transfer? All right. So number one is your prenatal vitamin, right? And here's my take on prenatal vitamins. Don't overspend. I've seen $80 and $100 prenatal vitamins, and most of it kind of ends up in your urine. So I'm not sure that they're really any better than the $8 Walmart gummy. So don't overspend on vitamins. But fish oil, DHA. DHA, by the way, is not DHEA. DHA is an omega-3 fatty acid, also known as fish oil. DHA or EPA are other names for that. But just note that's not the same thing as DHEA, which is a precursor hormone to testosterone. DHA. So we've got prenatal vitamin, we've got fish oil, CoQ10, vitamin D, vitamin E, and L-arginine. L-arginine. Now, L-arginine, and I was just having this conversation a little earlier with a nice patient. L-arginine is something, it increases blood flow really to the uterine lining. It is something that has been shown to increase, kind of chaotic growth of oocytes or of eggs in the ovaries. So I explicitly do not recommend L-arginine as something that is used for egg quality. So I wouldn't want you to use it for quote unquote fertility purposes. Say, gosh, I'm trying to get pregnant at home, so I'm going to increase my consumption of L-arginine. It may be harmful to eggs, but where it helps the blood flow to the uterine lining, and that uterine lining is, of course, what we need in order to implant a baby. That is your baby blanket, right? So prenatal fish oil, vitamin D, vitamin E, CoQ10, and L-arginine. Those are the ones. Now, if you have a history of endometriosis, we add vitamin C to that as well. But there's your list, and I hope that is helpful. I did actually write a little book on that. So we can talk ad nauseum about vitamins, but that book is called The Vitamin Victory. It is a nice, easy, cheap little ebook if you want it. It is available from the link that is on my Instagram page, which is Randy Fink MD. Click on that link. And $7 gets you the whole wonderful little ebook, as well as a discount savings of about $40 or so, I think, if you were to buy all those things from the link that's in there. So hopefully that is worth your time the vitamin Victory. Angela asked, will iron deficiency anemia significantly impact endometrial lining prior to my embryo transfer? Outside of iron supplementation and good nutrition, would you recommend PRP or anything else? So, the thing about iron deficiency anemia, it depends on how anemic you actually are. So you really want to be optimized by the time you get pregnant, because as you probably know, two things happen when you get pregnant. First is that pregnancy becomes a little parasite and it eats up your iron supply. So your blood count will only go down, generally speaking, when you get pregnant. Secondly, your what we call the volume of distribution increases, and so your own hemoglobin gets diluted out. So that's another reason that pregnant women start to become anemic. And if you're starting out with an anemia to begin with, it's only going to put you, kind of further down on the other side of that. And so that's why I think, you really kind of want to try to maximize that. Now, many women are, just based on menses alone, a little bit iron deficient. Some people get so iron deficient that it starts to show anemia in either the size of their hemoglobin molecules or in their hemoglobin or hematocrit blood counts. But even if those counts are in the normal range, many women are, in fact, a little iron deficient. They're just compensating for it. So I would not think that PRP necessarily is an important thing in general, or at least, as it pertains to iron deficiency. I think iron supplementation is really probably the best thing that you can do. Certainly good nutrition, good, keeping your body moving, getting some aerobic exercise, keeping the blood flowing. Those are probably good things to do. They're certainly good things to do, but there's nothing specific about anemia that will prevent a pregnancy from happening unless that anemia is really, quite severe. And if the anemia is quite severe, then, your body's going to tell you getting pregnant is not a good idea for you. So I think you're talking about probably a mild anemia, and I think it does pay to supplement that iron so that you can build back some of those red blood cells. Red blood cells, as you know, carry your oxygen, and that oxygen is necessary because that is how you supply nutrient and oxygen to grow to your baby inside the womb. But that's a great question. And so why are so many women anemic? Well, again, you've got a situation where every month you're losing blood. Now, menstrual bleeding often seems like there are many situations where it seems much worse than it actually is. So many people I know, and in my career, I have seen who believe they are hemorrhaging and go to the emergency room because they believe that, they're frightened by the amount of blood they see. They do a blood count. The blood count's completely normal. So a little bit of menstrual bleeding does go a long way, but it happens repetitively. It's happening in theory every single month, and when it does, it's not unusual to find that you start to become iron deficient or ultimately even anemic as well. That's where most of it comes from. The other places that we commonly lose blood from can be from the GI tract. And that's a thing that we worry about, because if blood is getting lost from the GI tract, well, is it because of something mild, like, you just have a little polyp that maybe is bleeding, or maybe a little ulcer that you're losing a little blood from in the system? Certainly that's possible, but we always worry about worse things happening in the colon. Why is your polyp bleeding? Why is your ulcer bleeding? So, I think it pays to have a good workup there if you're really not sure where the source of that bleeding is coming from. Always something good that we want to know. Question about N-acetylcysteine as a vitamin. Yep, NAC or NAC. N-acetylcysteine works as a powerful antioxidant and is part of the recommended evidence-based protocol for egg quality. So for people who are trying to get pregnant and trying to improve egg quality, N-acetylcysteine is definitely on the list. You are very smart to ask that, Dee. That's a great question. Let's see what else. Hello to Stephanie and hello, Amal. Good evening. Amal says, my embryo transfer wasn't successful and I am just devastated. And oh gosh, my friend, yep, I get that. This was my third transfer. On the last transfer, my doctor advised, on the last transfer, my doctor transferred 4 day 3 embryos. Do you think it's because of my age? I am 48. What do you advise that I do? I have no more embryos. Should I do more egg retrievals? Well, so the issue there, Amal, really has to do with age. And that is that probably greater than 9 out of 10 of the eggs in your ovaries are not normal at this point in your life. That means that the DNA in those eggs has become unstable because, again, they have been there since the day you were born. This is why it gets so much harder in nature for us to get pregnant as we mature. It doesn't mean that it's not possible because it can happen. But even when we do IVF to maximize the number of eggs that we can get from you, because normally, how many eggs do you release in a given cycle? 1 egg, right? You release 1 egg. If you ovulate, that egg gets released. It hangs out. It waits for sperm to come along and fertilize it, and then that's a pregnancy. In IVF, we try to get as many eggs as we can get so that we can try to maximize the odds that at least one of those eggs will be normal. But I have to be completely honest, and that is that at 48 years old, unfortunately, it is going to be the rare, very rare egg that we get that's going to be normal, that is able to make a normal embryo that will result in an embryo that implants. So one strategy, and it sounds like this is what they did for you, was to take those embryos and put as many as you can in, because the odds of them sticking, so when they're a day 3 embryo, the odds of them sticking are lower anyway. But at 48, we would expect, unfortunately, probably it would be very, very unusual for one of those embryos to stay. So I know that is a devastating thing to have to go through the whole process only to come up to this point. I would not advise you to do more egg retrievals because you could spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get a normal egg and still never get there. The odds of getting a normal egg are extremely low. And the climb up that mountain may not be possible at this point. In fact, reported pregnancies in IVF after the age of 45 are, I won't say unheard of, but they are exceedingly, exceedingly rare. Now, that doesn't mean anything about your uterus. So if you were to choose a donor egg, if you were to select an egg based on whatever criteria is important to you and your family, and fertilize that either with a partner sperm or with a donor sperm, you could absolutely make an embryo that you could put back inside your body and carry and deliver with relatively little difficulty. Now, there are some more challenges as we get older. Our blood supply becomes more challenged, just what we call hardening of the arteries and such. So there can be some vascular issues. I would want you to, think about making sure that your body is healthy enough for pregnancy. But assuming that it is, and in most cases it probably is, creating a donor embryo, placing that embryo inside of you, results in almost certain that you'll be able to get pregnant. There's a very, very high probability of pregnancy for you using a donor egg. Now, nobody goes into this hoping to be able to use donor eggs. It's just, obviously it's not realistic. We all would prefer to have a baby with our own genetic material. But when that's not possible, the next best thing is that every drop of blood there, Amal, every drop of blood in that baby is yours. Every tear that baby cries comes from liquid that came from you into that baby. Assuming that you have a male partner, that partner's sperm makes up your baby that you carried. And we know now something that's called epigenetics means that, yep, it's definitely the chromosomes that are going to program, the eye color, the hair color, probably the height, the skin tone, but it is the environment in which that embryo grows, meaning to say inside your uterus, that causes things like, like I always say, is your baby going to be mechanical or artistic? Is your baby going to color with crayons or markers? Is your baby going to write poetry or sing songs? Is your baby going to be better at baseball or kickball? Those things are programmed by the environment in which the embryo grows, and that is your uterus. So please don't discount the idea of a donor egg. It was certainly not what you hoped for in the beginning, but given what you've been through and what the future would look like doing more retrievals, and again, there are places that are only too happy to keep taking your money, knowing that the odds of you being successful are exceedingly low, if not near impossible. So a donor egg is really a great way to get what you want, create that embryo from the donor egg and a sperm, and that baby is yours like any other baby that came from you. So that's my kind of 2 cents worth on that. Noodles asks, I finally made it to transfer after suppression for silent endometriosis. What's the chance of success? Recurrent implantation failure in the last few rounds with a euploid embryo. So if the reason for that implantation failure there, Noodles, was because of the endometriosis, well, we know that if you're expressing that BCL6 marker, your 65% average probability of a euploid embryo drops down to about 8%. 65% becomes 8%. Unless you suppress it, which you did, which then takes your 8% and brings it all the way back up to 65%. And in fact, some of the studies have even a little higher success rate with that. So after suppression, my friend, I would say I am very optimistic about your possibilities. Now, there are some other things that I might think of. Tacrolimus, Prograf, there are some things in the autoimmune world that I would probably want to think about for you. Now, of course, I don't know your history, but it sounds like, if endometriosis was the problem, you suppressed it, you fixed it. There's still never a certainty with any single given embryo, but I just read a study that looked at after suppression of endometriosis from a positive BCL6 marker, that the success rate is actually higher than the success rate of a single euploid embryo alone. So I think you have cause there, Noodles, to be very, very optimistic. Only your day 5 post post a day 5 transfer and terrified at the beta. Haven't really felt anything yet. I would not expect you to, and you're taking ProGraph. Okay, good, perfect. I would not expect you 5 days after a transfer to really experience anything any differently. Now, in my practice, we do our betas at 7 days post-transfer, typically, sometimes a little bit later, but we want to get in on the very, very earliest blood test we can. 7 days post-embryo transfer, you may not have a positive urine pregnancy test. So we don't ask people to do that. In fact, I suggest that people don't do that because it can break your heart and give you a false negative because it's still just a little bit too early. But we do our blood pregnancy tests, generally speaking, at 7 days. And so, Noodles, my fingers are crossed for you there, my friend. I think you have great cause here to be really optimistic. Let's see who else we have going on here. Looks like Brianna is here this evening over on the New Life side. Thank you for being here tonight. The thing that I always close the show talking about is that this fertility stuff, it's not the book of your life. It is really just a chapter. And the whole goal here is to rewrite that chapter. That's why I went in to what I'm doing now into fertility. I left general obstetrics and gynecology because I wanted to help you rewrite that chapter. And it really, truly is something that we can do together. It's not the story of your life. I say every step forward with love and every step forward with kindness in this world. There is not enough kindness to go around. So please spread it. Smile at a stranger. Do something nice for a child that you don't know. Oh, my Glenda is saying, am I late? Well, considering we're about to say goodbye, Glenda, it's nice to see you as well. Every step forward with hope, because tomorrow is a new day, and it is full of all new adventures. So from the Gulf Coast tonight, I'm Dr. Randy Fink. Thanks so much for being here. I'll look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, all the best and good night.